The following is a conversation on mental toughness. Joining me on this conversation is Andrew Cieply, co-movement trainer and athlete. Our world has the pleasure of being filled with luxurious comforts. And while this is a good thing in many ways, too much of anything can have negative consequences. This talk will provide key elements to becoming a mentally stronger person and also give listeners a challenge that I encourage all of you to complete. You are listening to the Co-Movement Gym podcast, where we inspire people to move and live courageously. If you are enjoying this content, please support our sponsors in the description. I thank each and every one of you for being on this journey with us. Now, please enjoy the show. Folks, listen up. I want to take a brief moment and thank our podcast show sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic, Native Path Supplements, and Redmond Life. Lombardi Chiropractic has been my personal chiropractor for 10 years and has kept my body strong and healthy. Native Path Supplements are used by numerous co-movement clients and our coaching team here at the facility. I highly recommend that you try their chocolate collagen peptides. I was made aware of Redmond Life by one of our trainers here at the facility. He recommended I try Relight electrolyte powder. This supplement has dramatically improved my afternoon energy levels and overall hydration. I'd like to thank these three companies for providing outstanding service and products that make our society healthier and more resilient. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast when you call Lombardi Chiropractic, and not only will they treat you like family, they will provide a nice, enticing discount to all listeners. And use code COMO15, that's C-O-M-O 15, at checkout when shopping at nativepath.com or redmond.life and receive 15% off all your orders. Your support to our show sponsors assists in us paying for expenses and continuing to provide content we hope you all enjoy. Andy, how you doing, buddy?
Good, Josh. How are you?
Good, man. We're sitting in the studio. We're going to talk about a popular topic these days. We see it in a lot of self-help books. We get a lot of questions here at the gym about this topic.
Yep.
The topic being mental toughness.
Right.
And you and I know that the physical side can only take you so far.
Yep.
And a lot of people have the physical traits, but they're lacking with the mental toughness.
Yeah. And I'd go as far as to say that if you're really trying to get into the higher leagues, if you're an athlete, your mentality is going to be the number one thing. You know, I mean, we see people that make it a long way in sports and athletics who don't necessarily have all the physical gifts or skills, but they have the mentality that it takes to do what it takes to get them there.
Yeah, and in today's world, and I don't know if I can say it's now versus it never has been in the past, but it seems like it's pretty prevalent now, whether it's in business or sports or resiliency in life, right? So today we're going to dive into some tips, ideas, thoughts for people.
Sure, yeah.
And maybe spark some inspiration and motivation, because in the end, you need both.
Yep.
You know, you need a physical aspect, you need a mental aspect. And this is something that I tell myself every day, like most days you're not inspired and motivated.
Right.
And you have to find that, and you have to come up with mechanisms to get amped up and to be motivated to get the job done.
And I would even go further and say it's a mistake to rely on motivation. If you need motivation to do what you need to do, then you're not going to be successful, because like you said, most days you're not motivated. A lot of days you won't be. So you need to cultivate the discipline to be consistent and do what you know that you're supposed to do, even when you're not motivated.
Sure.
And those are the days that are going to be the make or break, because anyone can do well and anyone can do the workout when they're motivated, when they're psyched.
Yes.
But it's the people who do it consistently, even when they're not motivated, that end up outperforming everyone in the end.
Think about the group of people that will like go to a race or like a CrossFit competition, they watch, and now they're all like pumped up.
Oh yeah.
I'm
And then
gonna
they go
do
home
that.
and slam a workout.
Yes. For about a week.
Right.
And then they realize no one really cares. It's hard, like all these things.
Yeah.
And then if that intrinsic motivation isn't high enough, then why would you keep going?
Right.
And the other thing, you know, before we get really rolling is people say like, you know, do what you love doing, like whether it's from a job or fitness or workout. And so even if you do that, the majority of days you're still not super amped.
Sure.
Like, I'm not saying you're not excited or motivated-ish to go do things.
I mostly do all the things that I love for work and hobbies and all that kind of stuff. And there's still days when I'm not motivated to do them, even though I
100%.
love those things.
Yes,
Yep.
same here. And so it's not all roses and like explosions like social media and everyone will tell you,
Right.
know it is. So cool. Yeah, let's dive in, man.
Well, okay, sure. And first, what I'll say right off the bat is for this topic, I reread a book that I read a long time ago. It was like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. It's called Relentless by Tim Grover. And so if listeners don't know, Tim Grover was the mental toughness coach for Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. He worked with both of those guys and Dwayne Wade and several other very, very high performance athletes. So he wrote this book, Relentless, which is pretty much a deep dive into the mindset of those athletes. And it was a hard book to take notes on because a lot of it does not apply to us or our clients or 99.99999% of people. You know, Michael Jordan was famous for being pretty much psychotic. And that's the same with Kobe Bryant. That's the same with, Wayne Gretzky, all these like super high performing people.
Yep.
So what I did was I tried to take some of the best points that I thought could apply to most people who want to succeed as far as mental toughness goes, without getting too much into you have to get into the psychotic mind state of Jordan.
That's a great point to start off with, I guess, right there, is that if you're striving to be that 0.001%.
If you're trying to be Michael Jordan.
Yes.
Yep.
You won't live a world that you remotely think is normal.
Not at all.
With your friends, your family, your time.
Yep.
Everything will be, especially for most people listening to this, if not everyone, it will be so exotic. Like, let's say you want to be a multi-billionaire, right? And you hear people say that in the sense. It's like, okay, you're working 100-hour weeks, you live on a plane, right? Like it's your day is scheduled in 5-minute blocks, right? Yep. Like you're living in you don't see your kids.
And you have one single intense focus, which is just your goal.
Sure.
For Jordan, it was winning. For a business person, it might be making $20 billion or whatever it is.
Yep.
And you give up everything for that.
Yes.
It's very, very unbalanced and not healthy, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
But that is what makes Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant who they are.
Yes. So for people listening, be clear with where you want to fall on that spectrum, because I think it's really easy to imagine life and the one spectrum, famous and super rich, whatever it is, super fit, but the sacrifice and the unbalanced piece there, the vast majority want nothing to do with that.
Well, it was interesting. One of the thoughts I kept having as I read the book is how many kids out on the playground say, I want to be the next Michael Jordan, you know what I mean? Or I want to be the next Kobe Bryant or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, if you actually saw inside the mind of these people, which is what this book is, it's inside their mind, I don't think you'd want to be them. It is intense.
Totally agree. Yes. Okay, cool. So the first thing I want to get into, and I think you also have this, Andy, is taking responsibility for your daily actions. Okay. So if you're looking to, let's say, improve upon a sport or prepare for a big game or whatnot, what does your prep look like, right? Food, sleep, your warm-ups, your stretching, like you're taking full responsibility for not only the build-up to that action, but the result of it also. And then the ability to break that down in terms of how it went, good or bad, right?
Yep.
And a lot of people want to avoid creating a goal or a discipline because they don't want the responsibility of being in the gym 4 days a week, right? Or having to save X amount per month or whatever it may be, right?
Yep.
And so the responsibility piece is when you put your name on the paper and you sign up for whatever it is you're looking to pursue, there's a hard pill to swallow because you do have to show up for that, and for good or for bad. And so, full responsibility, that's one of the first things I like to touch on there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely responsibility. Like one of the things I got from this book was how Jordan and Kobe and those type of players own everything.
Mm-hmm.
They never blame anyone. Like if something goes bad, if they lose a game, even if it's like we watch the game and we say, "Oh, that other player screwed up" or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
they fumbled the ball, whatever happens, it doesn't matter. These guys own everything. They consider it their fault if the game was lost, or like a good business owner will often consider it his fault, even if it's one of his employees who screwed up or something. Um, Part of the reason you want to own everything is just because that means you're in control. Like Jordan, Kobe, these guys were in their minds, they were in control of everything. They didn't want to give up control to anyone else. So yeah, like you said, take responsibility. They owned every aspect of the game. They were going to prepare as much as possible, prepare themselves, prepare their team, play to the best of their ability, and just own everything. Make no excuses, blame no one else. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. Cool.
Let's see. You want me to give one?
Yeah, let's see.
Well,
I know we got a lot of overlay here, so
sure. So I guess the biggest theme that kept coming up in this book was just about doing the work.
yeah.
How much hard work there is. Every day challenging yourself to do what you don't want to do. In the gym or in practice, whatever it is. You have to basically, if you want to be a high level athlete, if you really want to succeed or get better, then you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's the only place where you're going to grow and get better. You have to push past laziness, push past fear, all those things that make you want to stop. Demand more of yourself than others demand of you.
Yep.
And you can think of like coaches as being demanding and telling you have to do this and that and whatever. Jordan, Kobe, those guys always demanded more of themselves. It didn't matter how much pressure the coach was putting on them or how much they were hollering at them that you got to do another workout. None of that compared to how much they demanded of themselves.
Sure.
For them, there was like there's no halfway, there's no half effort. You're always, if you give half effort, then you've lost already in their mind. So you're always making sure to give 100% all the time.
Yeah, it's and everyone has good days and bad days, but James Fitzgerald always used to say full effort equals full victory. So if in that day you put full effort forth, good or bad, it's still a victory, right? Because you're still trying your hardest within that moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think the wake up call that might come to some, like, let's say high school athletes or something who are listening to this is to reflect and think about how much if you're being lazy, if you're half-assing it, if you don't give everything in practice, if you skip days or whatever, what it takes what you're supposed to do to get better, and if you're skipping those things or not doing them or whatever. And you have to be honest with yourself. If you truly want to get better and raise your game and get to another level, if you have college scholarships in mind that you're trying to get to, whatever, you have to be honest with yourself and ask, am I doing everything? And then, like we said before, own that and either do it or don't do it. But that's where the results are going to come from.
And being honest with yourself on the goal that you say is the goal is the goal.
Yeah, that too. Yep.
That's pretty big because if it is a college scholarship and that is what you're passionate about, then you need to take a certain path, right? But if you say it's a college scholarship, but you really don't care, that's where you also have to be honest too about that. Because I find a lot of people, and we talk about this in goal setting podcasts, but like we'll set goals and then they fail along the way with the responsibility and the work ethic and all this because it's not truly important to them.
Yeah.
Or they had their season or their cycle and it's not there anymore, right? And those are honest conversations to have with yourself to where if it's a reoccurring theme of just not showing up, not putting out, not being motivated, is the goal truly the goal?
Yeah, one of the chapters in the book was called something along the lines of know yourself. And one of the biggest things he talked about in there is know what it is that you actually want.
Yes.
Because if you don't actually want it, then you're not going to work for it the way that you need to. So be clear.
100% agree. Yes. Cool. So I have on here, stop looking for shortcuts. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we live in a world today that's filled with hacks.
Yep.
30-day fixes, do these 3 exercises and you will be this, The reality is no matter where you are in your skill journey, it's a constant process with no shortcuts ever, anywhere, success in any field. And that's sort of deflating because we all at some level think like, maybe I'll get lucky or maybe this.
Shortcuts are so enticing.
They are to all of us.
The idea that you can get to your goal by skipping a few steps.
Yes.
Oh, everyone wants that.
Everyone wants that. And you see it, like, we'll just go over to finance, but you see it in that world where it's like the get rich scheme, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you do this and, you make 1,000% return.
That's why these schemes make so much money.
For sure. Yeah, the person making the scheme makes the money, right? But I've really sort of come to the assumption now with anything. It's 10 times more work than I'm anticipating in the beginning, and then there is no shortcut to getting it done.
Yeah.
And that's just not.
That's wisdom that comes with experience. Because I'm sure when we were younger, we tried all the quick shortcut,
everything,
things for fitness, health,
sure.
Business, whatever it was.
Yep.
But like you just said, over time, you just learn like, no, there's no shortcuts. Just consistency, day to day, keeping the goal.
Yes. And I've actually reversed that even farther. Is not only is there no shortcuts, it's going to take 5 to 10 times longer.
If you try a shortcut.
No, well, yes, but I'm just saying in general.
Oh, right.
So if you say it's a 1-year goal or a 6-month.
It's probably going to be a 3-year goal.
Correct.
5-year goal.
Exactly. Yes. If I say I'm going to build a porch in 3 weeks, it's 9 weeks. Everything. I don't know how many things I've started that have actually been completed in a shorter time frame or easier than I thought. Almost nothing. Ever.
Yeah. Almost because let's and here's like a pearl of wisdom for like young athletes. If shortcuts did work, then everyone would be NBA caliber or whatever it is they want to do. There's a reason that it's only like 0.0001%. It's because all these shortcuts and hacks don't work, and it's the people, the rare few who are willing to do consistent, regular work that get there.
And we all have access to the same podcasts, the same books, the same tips, the same food, the same supplements. Yep. So if that's all on the board and we're all reaching and if we have access from that, what's the differentiating factor? Yeah. It's the work.
If all these get-rich-quick schemes worked, we'd all be millionaires.
Absolutely. And this is not the case. So.
Right.
Cool. All right. What do you got, buddy?
How about, I like this one. He talked a bit about letting go. And what I mean by that is stop caring about what others think. That
was my next one.
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
And that's the downfall of a lot of young athletes, especially who are worried, like, what do their friends think? What do the people in the stands think? Comparing themselves to others, all that kind of stuff. Like, when you get to like Jordan and Kobe and stuff, they have no care in the world about what anyone else thinks. They're just focused on what they're trying to do.
Yep.
When you stop caring about what others think, when you let go of fear and uncertainty, that's when you're finally like in the zone, as he calls it, or just you're able to focus on your goal with no emotions, no distractions. So that's a huge one. I mean, I think caring what others think is the big downfall of a lot of people.
That could be almost the biggest thing on this conversation.
Probably, yeah.
Or one of them. And it's not just sports.
No, not at all.
Everything.
Yep.
From public speaking to a podcast video that we're doing now to an Instagram 60-second clip. Like, it's constant. Like, what do people think? And this and that. And maybe I shouldn't say this. But I think that if your goal is correct and your intent is correct, I do think that you should shut out as much outside voices as possible that's not supportive of the goal.
Absolutely.
And now it's good to take negative feedback for sure, but the higher up the ranks you go anywhere in life, you got to filter out more and more of what we're saying, like the crowd is dictating, because most of them are living vicariously through you, or they may or may not want you to succeed for varying degrees. But when you can silence that and to get into the zone and be circled with the 1 to 5 people that are truly helping protect you and guide you along that way, that's when you stop caring about whether it's a missed shot or the business thing that didn't fly or the training program that didn't work or anything. You're free. Dan Pena talks a lot about it. Elon Musk, a lot of people like eagles fly alone, they say. And that's a hard place to be. Like, it's lonely, right? And I'm not even saying like you have to be elite to feel this.
Right.
This elites, you can define that in any way possible.
Yep.
But being okay with being alone on your journey, right, is that's it, right? A great example of this, we talk about him a lot, but Bob with his running, right? You're running by yourself 60 miles a week. Like, you're alone. There's no one there saying, let's go, Andy, like you can do it. Or with Bob or if you need your hand held along the process anywhere and looking for approval, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yep.
Likes on Facebook, likes on Instagram, number of views. Like, I've had a YouTube channel for like, I think 10 years and like our subscribers are still lower, right? It's been a very slow climb and things are climbing 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's not like I got 4 views the first year on a video and I was like, oh man, I'm done. Like, this sucks. I suck. If the intent is right and the goal is right and you can silence out the data, the analytics, the voices, you just stick to that and you do the work. That's where I think you won't start to care as much about what people are thinking of what you're doing.
And if you are really afraid of what people are thinking, I think it's probably good to reflect on, like, what are you really afraid of? Like, what's the worst thing that happens? If you're a player on a court and you have a bad game, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I mean, a couple people are going to be like, oh, he had a bad game, and then forget about it as soon as they leave. Like,
totally.
Like, we blow things up in our minds to be like way scarier than they really are.
Yep.
Your post not getting enough likes or whatever, or people, you embarrassing yourself, on the field during one game or whatever. It's not as scary. It's not as consequential as you think. It's not going to hurt you in any way. It's only going to make you stronger if you can live through that and be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I don't need to care about that in the future.
Absolutely. Tim Ferriss talks about this where there's a drill he does where he does like worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So let's say you're nervous about doing a talk in front of 50 people. And it's like, okay, worst case scenario is you pass out and you don't finish your talk.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's cool. People will laugh. But Monday morning when work comes around again, or maybe a few bar conversations after with buddies, right?
Yeah.
Nothing even matters.
Didn't even matter.
And that's the worst case scenario, which won't happen generally. And so I actually do that a lot. I read that in, I think it was a 4-hour work week. And that is, with the land we bought, the farm. I'm like, what's the worst case scenario? I sell it because I can't afford it for a profit. Okay, bye. So like I do those things a lot,
It's funny how afraid we can be sometimes, especially when it comes to the approval of others and whatnot. But then when you run through in your mind, like, okay, if that happens, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? It's not nearly as bad as you think it is.
No.
Especially if you have good people around you. Like, nothing's going to change.
Nothing. No. And I think that we've proven that just in the last few minutes with that. I hope people can resonate with that because this is, to me, possibly the most important part of this.
I think so too.
And it's amazing that when the fear is truly removed, or you're in that flow state, there's no criticism that can affect you, right? Like you're on that process, you're on that
and it
journey.
Simplifies things so much. You can just focus on what you want to do and need to do.
That's it.
Yep.
Yes. I don't know. We can move on from that, but stop caring what everyone thinks and, the criticism and the fear around that and just play or go for it.
Yep, just know what it is that you want to do and just do that.
Yeah.
No
if you're a
concern about
people
others.
pleaser, you won't succeed.
Yep.
Like in anything. It might sound bad, like if you're a people pleaser and you're listening, then it is what it is. But like if you're constantly having to make everyone around you happy and satisfied, then, you're going to be living your life centered on all of their lives without your interests first at some level, and you won't get very far.
Sure.
So, yeah. Cool.
Another one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take another one from the book here. He talks a lot about preparation. So I'll hit that. And this kind of ties in with the hard work stuff we were talking about. But I mean, he really does say, especially if you're an athlete, preparation is everything. You can't wait until the game is getting close or the season is getting close or whatever, and then start getting ready. The more prepared you are, the less you're going to have to think and analyze during the game. You can just act on instinct, right? You have to prepare so much. You basically have to prepare until you believe in yourself completely to where you can just trust your own instincts out there. We all know what it feels like to be unprepared, whether it's for an exam in school or a talk or whatever it is we're doing. There's so much uncertainty and you're not going to be at your best. You're thinking about all the things that can go wrong. You're trying to figure things out on the fly. The more prepared you are, the better you're going to be in game time or in performance time, whatever it is. And so he just harps on that in this book and there's so many stories about like Michael Jordan and Kobe and just how much preparation they do, like every scenario they can think of and how they drill it tens of thousands of times to the point where anything that happens on the court, they don't even have to think about it. They just act on instinct because they've just practiced it so many times that they're ready for anything.
And that preparation that you're talking about, I think, is so much more volume than people think.
Yeah.
Like the rehearsal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you
don't just practice a couple hundred free throws and be like, I'm ready or whatever.
For sure. Yeah. I think about like Cameron Haynes. He's a hunter. Joe Rogan hunts with him. He's a bow hunter. And he will shoot targets at 100 yards. And normally like 30 yards is pretty good for bow. But he shoots thousands of shots in all scenarios, and wind and kneeling and standing and all this. All the time. And his preparation, when you see him out in Colorado hunting elk and he shoots this massive 5x5 and it's beautiful, you're like, oh man, I really wish I could do that. And it's like, okay, like he had last year 1,000 hours shooting his bow in a year. And you had 3. And so
I think people would be shocked at the high performers in any area, whether it's the arts or performance or business or whatever, if they could see how much preparation, because you always see the final product. We watch the game on TV and we're like, oh, they're so awesome. Or we watch the performance on the stage or whatever. But you would be blown away at how much preparation these people put in to doing what they're doing.
To one discipline,
yeah.
For sure. I think about when I went out west hunting with Matt a few years ago, it was about 3 months of prep to figure out how we were going to be in the backcountry for 8 days, sleeping in a tent with food, calories, hunting, the tools to repair your bow, right? GPS, like emergency 1, emergency 2, like, and this is a minor adventure compared to what a lot of people do, but it could be big to a lot of people. And it was to me at the time, but it was like a lot of like, everything's on the lawn and you're taking account for like your climbing gear, same thing. But it was actually significantly more time prepping than I ever anticipated. When I said yes to that trip, I was amazed. I was down cellar and there's a bed down there and I had the whole bed covered with like day 1 food, day 2. But then how do you package that in a Ziploc bag? How do you get 3,500 calories in a normal size Ziploc bag, and that's 1 day. And then you do that for 8 to 10 days. And I don't know, there was a lot to it, but there was a prep that was just preparing versus like, we're just finding Chipotle's and, you know, this shouldn't happen. And it's just, you're not remotely ready.
I'll say for athletes too, like you got to prepare for scenarios. So like so many athletes are in the mindset that like, say you're playing basketball and you want to be good at driving to the hoop and making your layup, and you know there might be contact into the basket. You know, it's a hard play to make. So many athletes are in the mindset of like, if I just work out in the gym and have strong legs, and if I do my my agility training so that I have quick feet, then I'll be okay when I get into that situation. If you're a basketball player and you find that maybe one of your weak spots, and that's what you should be looking at here too, is your weak spots. maybe one of your weak spots is you have a hard time driving to the hoop because you don't like taking contact. There's always going to be a defender that puts his body on you, and that's uncomfortable. And like the first few times you do it, you get knocked down, and nobody really likes that when they first start doing that in basketball. If that's like, let's say, one of the hardest parts of the game for you, your preparation is find somebody, some friends, and practice that 10,000 times.
Yes.
I mean, like, this person is going to be defending you. You tell them, this is your teammate. We're going to work together on this. You're going to try to defend me, and you're going to defend me hard, and I'm going to drive against you, and I want you to, like, put your body on me, and you give me a few hard fouls, like, whatever, and I'm going to drive against you to the left, to the right, at different speeds, everything. I'm going to do it over and over and over again. I guarantee after 1,000, 10,000 times, it's going to get to the point where it feels comfortable. And now when you're in the game and you're trying to drive, you're not afraid anymore. All of a sudden, this feels like I've done this 10,000 times.
It's
like
routine.
I know what this feels like. That's the power of preparation. It turns something into routine. And if you can especially do that with the weak parts of your game, and turn those things into something that's just like routine and comfortable for you, now you're a force to be reckoned with out there.
And what you just gave was a great example of nailing down the specifics.
Yeah.
Versus I just suck as a player. That's like the general 50,000 foot view versus the 5 foot view is I am not scoring what I could be because I'm afraid of contact in the lane when I go to drive.
Right. Make it specific.
Yes.
And prepare for that.
Yes.
Practice that.
I had that with hunting season a few years ago with bow, where I'd missed 2 shots in a row where I had to really go back to like, what am I thinking? Like as the buck's 100 yards away, 50 yards, how am I prepping? Where am I standing? Like, all this, you break, right? And then last season I had a good year. So it's the detailed breakdown versus the aerial view of I'm just not a good runner.
Right.
Why?
Yep.
Well, you don't know how to breathe correctly, right? Your calves are too tight, whatever it may be.
Whatever it is, yep.
Yeah, that's a great
I'm
point.
sure that's you in jiu-jitsu all the time. Like you guys are drilling specific situations or positions.
And we break down like to tiny things, like with a Kimura grip, let's say you'd never use your thumb. That you wouldn't think that's major. It's like, I know how to do a Kimura, right? But until you get ripped out of that and you break your thumb, you realize you throw the thumb over. It's very specific though.
Yep.
There's lots and lots of little examples in that sport of that, but it really isn't anything.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. So next, this wasn't in the book. Something that I find really important for not just student athletes, but everyone, like necessary deloads.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We're saying like, where does that play into when we're talking about mental toughness? You can stay tougher longer if you deload.
Sure.
You're not burning out.
Yep.
And you did a deload, Costa Rica. I went to Florida for a week, and like, that's really important. And for physical, that's obvious, but also mental, change of routine, new environment. We talk about this a lot. But I think that we can go too far as a culture to say like more is better. Like here I'm sort of contradicting, not really, but
No, because people who think about mental toughness do have that, like, if they're trying to work on their mental toughness, they're like, okay, I got to go harder all the time.
Yes.
Like, this is what I'm trying to work on. And
but what they don't see is that elite athletes have deloads in their cycles all the time. You're going to be deloading before your race, right? Like that is ultra paramount to being a high performer. So if you're a football player and you got done with a 16-week season and, all of this, like you should maybe take 2 weeks after the season and like chill out and like all of that stuff, like go play racquetball, like do something different. And I think then you come back tougher in the long run versus 365 days a year. I'm on all the time, super crazy. It just doesn't work. It won't work, long term.
Totally. So, that makes sense.
Yep. What else you got?
Oh, let's see. I got a couple more. One theme that kept coming up in the book was pressure. And he talked about the difference between players who crumble under pressure versus the Kobes and the Jordans and such who thrive on pressure. He said the best athletes, the elite embrace challenges. And we talk about that a lot here too, not just amongst elite, but we're always trying to like challenge ourselves. We enjoy being challenged.
We're doing it now.
Yeah, exactly.
You're doing your 50-mile race.
Yeah.
I'm doing the 47 swims in the Adirondacks and
Yep.
It's always and I love that.
And this resonated with me. He said in the book, like, the elite athletes intentionally create situations to jack up the pressure even higher on themselves. So some people, like I said, who are afraid of high pressure situations, they don't want the pressure. They back down from it and they're trying to avoid it. They're trying to find ways to lessen the pressure. But some people, the ones who embrace it, are actually trying to create situations where they have even more pressure and they're challenging themselves. I've done this myself a lot. Like, one of the things that he mentioned was like Jordan. Jordan was famous for his trash talking. And Tim Grover said that the trash talking wasn't, a lot of people thought that was to like get inside his opponent's head and like totally wreck them and crumble their confidence. That might have been a part of it.
Sure.
But part of it was the more Jordan talked, now he was putting pressure on himself because he had to back it up.
That's a good point. I mean? Sure.
And I mean, I can't think of any specific examples right now, but I've certainly, I remember back when I was a soccer player and we used to play soccer during lunch break in high school. And I remember I would finish my lunch as fast as I could, run out to the soccer field. And as I was approaching the soccer field, there was already two teams playing. Yep. And as I'm running towards the field, I'm looking at who's on what team or whatever. And I always like ran to the team that had the weaker players because I just wanted to be up against the better players. And maybe we'd lose because the better players are on the other team. But I was always looking for ways to like make it harder for myself because that was more fun. And if you can get into that sort of mindset where you start to enjoy pressure in that way, you enjoy challenges in that way, that's where you have to be if you want to be a high performer in these areas. Because I mean, there's a lot of high pressure situations once you're up at the higher levels in athletics or whatever. Yep. You got to be able to deal with it. And you got to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Another way to put some pressure on yourself is to go public with your goal.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
Right? Like, tell people.
Yep.
And that way in 3 months when someone says, how's your training for your half marathon going? And you're like, oh, I quit. It's like, that sucks to say that.
Yep.
So I find that being clear with people and letting them know sort of like what you're striving for, that can help big time the little group of people, or maybe big if it was on social media. Not that I don't think that many people would truly care, but a group of people will. And whether it's family, friends, and that'll keep you oriented, to where you should be heading. So
totally.
Let's see here. I may be done. I am going to end before I want you to finish, but I have a little /challenge and ideas for people with more specific homework for them. So
okay, well, I'll hit one more then here. Failure and dealing with failure and dealing with mistakes. Maybe we've touched on this already because they kind of overlap a lot. But he just says if you screw up, no blaming others, no excuses. You own your mistakes. This is you trying to own everything again. That's the elite athlete's mentality. They own everything. He says making mistakes isn't failure. Failure is when you don't own it or when you blame others or when you make an excuse. That's the only failure that there is. And we both know, like, whatever you're trying to do, you're going to fail over and over and over and over and over until you succeed. So you have to be okay with that and not be afraid of it and not be afraid of what other people think of your mistakes and your failures, because you're going to make a ton of them. That's the only way to get to where you want to be. In the book, he says that failure is what happens when you decide that you failed. Until then, you're just looking for ways to get to where you want to be.
And that's huge, because if you look at failures as still almost a win, because it's a step along the journey.
That's it. Yeah.
There's a huge reframing piece.
Yep.
But if you fail and you classify that as a failure, and then you blame something, and then the environment, something, people on the failure, you're never going to be better off from that failure.
No, take
right?
responsibility and try to figure out what you can learn from it. You had a bad game. You're not a failure. That's not a failure. You had a bad game. Great. What did you do wrong? What can you improve on? You're going to head back to the practice court and you're going to work on that and do your absolute best to not have that happen again. Yeah, and you just have to embrace that it's not going to be a smooth road. There's going to be tons of mistakes and failures along the way. Every single one of them is your chance it's like, okay, good. This showed me where there's something I need to work on. I'm going to patch up that hole. This failure is something else I need to work on. I'm going to patch up that hole every single time. And the more holes you patch up, eventually you get to the point where you're a very solid player or, whatever arena you're in.
And you're not fearful of failing because you have used those failures in the past to make you better.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, win-win.
You didn't run away from them.
You didn't run away from them. Yeah. That's great, man. Great stuff. Anything else on your end?
Oh, let me see. I don't think so. Nah, we got everything here.
We're good?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So and you and I talked about this a little bit before, but people like challenges or homework, right, in some of these conversations. And so there's some things here that I've put down. I'm doing a few of them. And I think that when you look at like consistency, preparation, thought, focus, the following things are going to help people with the habit of that. Okay, so this is just habit building.
Yep.
So one of them, the first one is accumulate 500 miles per year of walking or running unplugged.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So it's like it's simple, but is it? And then what's behind it? And so unplugged is pretty big.
No phone. Yep.
No phone. It's about 10 miles a week. You can't slack because what happens if you skip 2 or 3 weeks? Now it's like 12 miles a week. And do you know what I'm saying? Like consistency. You have choices, walking, running, you're in nature, sunshine, fresh air. It's not damaging to the body, but it is exercise. I think that a lot of people would struggle with this.
I think so too. And that's where the benefit comes from is consistently doing something that you don't want to do, that is hard for you.
Long term. And that's the daunting piece, right? Because when you really think about it, it's like...
You got to be mentally tough to do that.
Yes. And it's like 10 miles a week. It's like, okay, if you look at it on the surface level, not hard. Sure, 52 weeks, right? Or 50 weeks. And so, yeah, I do something similar to this. I don't this year, well, I'll hit 500 this year most likely, but I'm not trying to. But next year is where I'll maybe make it like where I actually track it and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that would do a lot of people a lot of good.
That'd be massive.
Okay, next, cold showers, nothing to do with health.
Right.
Like, because again, I don't know, I'm sort of out on that. Like, I think cold submersion, like ice therapy is good.
Yep.
Cold showers, like you and I have talked, we're not sure yet. But the consistency of doing 30 seconds a day, every day for a year. This is another year.
Yep.
And so like it's Tuesday and it's 7 p.m. and you just don't want to do it. You got to do it.
Yep.
And that's that mindset of like that second voice saying, turn it to cold. Just do it.
Yep.
Now. And like, if this is, again, what you're signing up for, then you will be your own judge, because this is so simple that if you just decide not to, it's not on anyone else, you know?
I like that one too, because that's just a pure test of mental toughness that you have no excuse not to do. The only reason, like, because with the walking thing, people could say if they get like super busy or something like that, or sick or whatever.
Sure.
But the 30 seconds of cold shower takes 30 seconds, and all you have to do is put your hand out onto the knob and turn it to cold.
Yes.
And so there's no excuse in the world not to do this. The only reason that someone wouldn't is because they just don't want to. And so it's like the task here is, can you do something that you've decided you want to do that in the moment you're not going to want to do? Can you make yourself do something that's uncomfortable?
Yes. And on the time side of things with the 500 miles per year, because I thought about this the other day when I was walking by myself unplugged, that people would say that, the time. I looked up and I actually shot an Instagram reel this morning. I haven't put it out yet. 18 hours a week, adults are on social media.
Yeah. You have the time.
You have the time. So like, we don't really need to go farther than that.
Right.
Like if you're a social media editor and you're like, oh, it's my job, sure. But it's not you, most likely. So even if you took 9 hours a week, half, and did that, is more than enough time to walk 10 miles.
Yeah.
You could walk 30 miles, you know? So it's, so that is part 2. Part 3, read 10 pages a day from a physical book. Obviously the education piece, you have to be, and I put this in here because I'm amazed at the number of younger people I talk to that don't read.
Yeah.
Like
not many at all.
It's in the number one reason they can't focus. Like that's sad.
Electronics, social media and stuff, that's all way more enticing.
Every 3 seconds, something changes. Yes.
When you could pick up your phone that's a hard thing for them to do.
Yes. So not only will you get 5 to 10 minutes of like Zen parasympathetic, right, stimulation, you're going to be slightly smarter, hopefully. But it's the discipline again, you know, so it's
all
like,
this whole challenge is all about cultivating discipline,
and
which is like the
basic
biggest part of
habits.
mental toughness.
Yes. So that's part 3. I like this, and this is the next 2 are optional. I'll just put an asterisk, optional. Camp 1 night per year per season. Okay. No other reason than nature, outside, somewhat uncomfortable, right? Winter. I've only camped in the winter a few times. But I think that's sort of cool. Like, again, if you're in like Los Angeles and like you just can't, you don't have a car, you know, that's why it's optional. But I think for most people, it's doable. You can definitely do 3 seasons.
Everyone in our area.
You can, even if you don't have a tent, you can borrow one. If you don't have that, get a hammock. They're $27. I think that's cool. Like, and I can't really go farther than that other than what we've already said. So 4 nights out of 365.
I think the biggest challenge for most people is just like slowing down again, you know?
Correct.
I mean, getting unplugged and being away from home for 24 hours where it's just quiet, it's nature, their mind calms down.
Yes.
It's difficult for people. That's uncomfortable for people. Yes. And it should be relaxing and peaceful. I love the woods.
I love the woods.
That's very uncomfortable for people.
I agree. That's another reason why that's out there. So, and the last thing would be to volunteer 40 hours in a year. Okay. Which is not many hours per week. Helping, you know, go to a school, whatever. Like there's a million examples, but it's, again, you would have to have the goal of accumulating that amount of time. So you got to stay on it, right? Unless you're going to do 1 full-time week in a year. But I think there's a lot of benefits to that. Helping others, you're not plugged in, right? Sitting there volunteering on your phone, wasting away. I think there's a discipline component to that.
You're going to feel really good in the end too. I mean,
the gratitude.
No one will ever do volunteer work that does real good.
Yes.
And not leave feeling awesome.
Yes.
Like very happy that they did it.
And you can get out of your routine. We talked about that earlier. You can meet new people, new opportunities, right? Like on and on and on. I can't tell you, and you know, like I do like to talk. So I go to these new things, new people, new events, anywhere, something pops up.
Yeah.
Not even saying it's a big deal. Normally it's never a big deal, but it's like, it's cool. Like now we got a podcast guest, or, you know, I've got this person for this. It's just something all the time, but it's not that way if you're just in that same bubble all the time, same routine, and it's just spinning the wheels, hamster wheel.
Yeah.
You will look back 5, 10, 15 years and you will realize you haven't gone far.
If you feel stuck in a rut, which a lot of people do, getting jostled out of your routine is one of the best things for you. Because we're just creatures of habit. And once you're in a rut and everything is automatic, you just stay in that rut.
Yes.
You need to get knocked out of it. Go do something different, whether it's a vacation or volunteer work or change of environment of some sort, something to like stimulate your mind in a new way that reinvigorates you.
You know who does this really well? Hamilton College. Every 7 years, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but I think it's every 7 years they do a sabbatical. one year.
Yeah.
1 year or a semester, again, I'm not sure, but it's a period of time for them to recoup their energy, creative thought, new routine,
And I'm
travel,
sure a lot of them,
write a book.
I'm sure a lot of them come back almost a new person.
For
in a
sure.
way, you know?
Yeah, and that's very, very smart of
Yeah.
them. So cool. We're good?
I think so. Yeah. Good.
All right, we're signing off. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you on the other side.
See you later.